What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in the unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late night talk show, and I'm your host Kevin Moore. For the next hour I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show I'm joined with Ervin Laszlo, who is an Hungarian philosopher of science, systems theorist, integral theorist, and an advocate of the theory of quantum consciousness. Now, Ervin was born in Budapest, Hungary, and the son of a shoe manufacturer and the mother who played the piano. Now, Laszlo himself started playing the piano when he was just 5 years old, and gave his first piano concert with the Budapest Symphony Orchestra at the age of 9. Laszlo has published about 75 books and over 400 papers, and is the editor of World Futures, the Journal of General Evolution. In 2002, Laszlo received an honorary doctorate, and in 2010, Laszlo was elected an external member of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. Ervin Laszlo, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It's wonderful to be with you.
It is wonderful. It really is wonderful to have you on. I'm so grateful. Some fascinating conversations we're going to have today, and you've done some really fantastic work. I think, first of all, you've probably been asked this question a million times, but just tell us a bit about yourself to begin with.
Well, that's the most difficult question for all. You know, the great sages always ask, know thyself. That's a big problem. So I don't know too much about myself, except to say that I'm somebody who has been always curious to know things. And I kept asking questions, and it went wherever it took me. And if I had something that's was interesting enough, then I wrote it down. And after a while, it turned out that other people were interested in it too. So our first book got published in 1963. And since then, I've written quite a few, some papers, several hundred. And now my 89th book is going to be published next month.
Oh my gosh, your 89th book. Congratulations, that is fantastic. And what do you know now, today as we speak, about the nature of who you are compared to 1960s understanding?
Yes, I think I do know something more. I believe that I'm not just my body. That's the first thing. I think that all of us are. I think every plant, every mosquito, everything is more than just simply a physical, chemical, biological structure. I think we are all participating in an information flow, which is basic to the universe, which is what the universe is basically. This cosmic consciousness which holds things together, which makes things what they are. The famous chi or key of all life, and the famous uh, akashic record of the universe, or whatever name we give it. But I think we are more than just our body, our brain. There is also something which we call a mind, a consciousness, which is not even mortal. I mean, I think it's a continuous phenomenon in the universe that we associate with our body, we elaborate, we evolve, but ultimately it's something that exists in the world and to which we contribute, to which we borrow for a while, and it goes back. We'll borrow it again, perhaps in a different body. But I think I am also a consciousness, which is a universal, a cosmic phenomenon. So that is my conviction.
No, thank you so much for that. And how much peace does that give you? What does that do for you, that understanding, do you think, after all these years?
Well, I would like to think that it gives me assurance that it's not just going around once and then that's it, but that is something that what we do in the world has something to do with why the world is, both with what the world is and why the world is. These are the biggest questions that I've been lately been involved with and occupied or preoccupied with. It gives me some level of peace and assurance that what I do has a role in the world. What I do is connected with other things in the world, with other minds, with consciousness as a universal phenomenon. And that I have something here which is a task and a challenge that I can respond to, and that I can try to respond to and do my best. And if I do my best, then I think I do well for myself, and I do also well for the world.
Did you always think that way when first starting out on your research?
Not consciously, but consciousness, not consciously. Because I was a concert pianist, in my teens and 20s. And I had this experience of playing, which is entering into another domain, into another dynamic sphere. And I knew that there is something more to my life than the everyday mind, everyday preoccupations, and just seeing things and hearing things, and that's being all. That's what your senses can give you. So I had what you might say an altered state experience, although we didn't call it that. I didn't know that word even. But I had this musical experience, a higher state of consciousness. I didn't call it that either, but I knew it, that there is something extraordinary can happen. And I was curious. What kind of a world is that? Is there more than just atoms running around in space and time? And does it have a meaning to it? Does it have something more to it? So I didn't know it, but I kept asking questions. And because I had an experience, which is an experience which today we call a transcendental experience, which comes from performing music, especially for a public, especially with other musicians like an orchestra or a chamber group. That's a fantastic experience. And so that gave me some assurance that there are some things to find out. And that's how I started, just trying to find out.
Yes, and it's almost pondering on your awareness, that ability to look in the mirror and be aware of your reflection, and where does that awareness come from? Is it contained within the mind, or is it part of us that's contained outside the mind? And
yes.
Yeah. Do you feel, after all your years of all this wonderful work that you've contributed towards, that this actualizing cosmos, this consciousness, which is undefinable by words really, and is self-judging, it wants anything from us, in a sense?
Well, ultimately, this is a late night show. It's just a late night thoughts, right? These are things that one comes up to verbalize when the day is done. Except that in my last book, I did end a last part to it, a last section, which are these kind of thoughts, which I don't ordinarily think or share. But I have come to the conclusion that, yes, these are real. They are things that have some level of credibility, and one ought to talk about it. So the word, yes, ultimately, I think that there is an intelligence. There's intelligence because this world is not casual. It's not possible to be random. Something is there. And this something is what the great scientist at the end of his life, Max Planck, said in an interview to a British paper, actually. He said that I can tell you at the end of my career as a scientist looking into the deepest levels of physical reality, I can tell you that there is no such thing as matter. There are vibrations which are held together. I'm paraphrasing is what he said.
Sure.
It seems to be have to be held together by something like a cosmic consciousness. How is the atom of the proton and the neutron? How are they held together? They're all individual vibrations. Together they make an atom. Atoms together, they make molecules, they make macromolecules, they make crystals and cells, they make organisms, they can make ecologists, they can make a whole Gaia system, they can make a whole galaxy. And it cannot be pure random. Now I'm saying beyond what Max Planck said, I'm saying on my own, but I'm taking it off from there. His insight is not something that the Newtonian physics called matter. That's not what there is. What there is informed vibration. Okay, that seems very esoteric, but I think this deepest physics today, quantum physics, there is no matter, there is no energy per se, there is information acting on patterns and clusters of vibration. That is my current insight, the current conclusion that I describe. And I think these vibrations, these clusters, have a goal, have an aim, have a task. Something is evolving. And I think what is evolving is a more and more complex systems that are capable of more and more complex and embracing, understanding, awareness. You use the word awareness, which I'm very glad, because this is what the question is. It's not just perception. Perception is through the brain, yes, but our awareness of each other, awareness of the world around us, which is beyond perception. This is something that is given in the world, and we have higher level of awareness, the higher our complexity, the higher our decoding system, which is the brain and the nervous system. So whereas I think a mouse has an awareness, I think a tree has an awareness, I think the whole planet has a level of awareness of its own. But if you have a complex system, such as our nervous system, it picks up more of that. And perhaps the task, the challenge, the evolution in which we participate is to bring this awareness to higher and higher levels, where ultimately it can fuse with that consciousness, which is the consciousness of the cosmos, which the Easterners call nirvana, this fusion. You can call it Brahman, you can call it the Tao, or you can call it a God, one God or 1,000 gods. And so there are many, many names for it, but there is a higher level of intelligence in this world which underlies all things. And perhaps our being here in the world has to do with our living up to that intelligence, perfecting ourselves, and becoming more and more getting closer and closer to that intelligence, so we finally can enter into this eternal communion, which the Buddhists talk about, which is paradise, the eternal life in the Western theological perspective, but which is perhaps the ultimate aim of our existence on this world.
But it must be very important for consciousness for us to be here now. And there's a lot of guests I get on that, well, no, some of the new wave of guests I'm getting on do talk about that. If we can't be happy in the moment now, who's to say we're going to be any happier when we've gone and moved to other dimensions or other levels? Isn't it just so very important to find peace and happiness where we are now?
These are definitions of how we feel. Peace and happiness, if we have it in ourselves, we can contribute it in others, into the world around us. And all the great spiritual systems tell you that when you find peace, you can create peace. And when you create peace around you, you fulfill the purpose of your life. Even to the extent where the Eastern spiritual systems talk about your journey beyond life and toward rebirth or toward a higher union. That this is influenced by the way you live your life. So the happier you are, the more fulfilled you are, the better it is for you and the better it is for the world. So I'm preaching this, but I'm trying to apply it to myself also, which is not so easy.
No. What have you found that's created peace and happiness in your present moment, even when doing all this wonderful work, when it kind of points towards that as well, this work does? What's worked for you? What advice could you give to people?
Try to detach from the everyday rush, from the everyday movement, one day and after another, which seems to be senseless. After all, ask yourself, what did I do today? Besides making a choice of what do I order at lunch or what kind of movie I go to look at in the evening or whatever. But there must be something more, and you can reach that something more when you can enter more into yourself. Be mindful, be meditative, be prayerful, be loving, be all these words, all these expressions ultimately come up to the same thing. Of trying to find yourself as who you truly are, find yourself at home. Because I think the cosmos is a system of consciousness, of which matter is a manifestation. It is not a real manifestation, but bodies and things that are moving about are projections of this mind. And this, if you can connect to this mind through your own consciousness, I think you can become more spiritual, more deep, more happy, and more fulfilled. I don't see any other way of really fulfillment except recognizing who you are and that what the world is like. I'm trying to find a credible scientific basis for this. This has been my work for the past 20 years at least. And I'm doing that more than ever now in the last 2 books.
Yes.
And this is what my task appears to be in life. But the advice I give is that, believe me, if you can, that it is not just imagination. This kind of an infinite consciousness, with an infinite consciousness in the world that is being reflected in our individual minds, is something that exists, and something that we are moving toward, and something that give sense to our life and our existence.
Wow, that's very deep. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. I really do. And I completely agree with you. When, if you want to find the peace and the surrender, well, surrender's part of it as well, I think. Just surrendering to what is. That's not saying you don't use your legs and hands and whatever to head as well, to move forward. But, surrendering to whatever's going to be is going to be. You've done your best. And that space that you mentioned a moment ago, that finding that space within you, which is your consciousness, the true essence of who you are, is the best space to go and find. Because you reconnect to that which you've always been and that which you are, not exactly that which you are now in this container, having this experience. And that's not getting out of present moment. That's just reconnecting with who you are. Would you agree?
I'm glad you say this, even these terms like reconnect reconnecting. I even talk about recognizing, spelled with a hyphen. We don't really know things as new things. We remember things. We recall things. Plato already said that there is no knowledge except that because our soul has already known all things. We just remember what our soul has already acquired. So when we cognize, we recognize, and because we remember our place in the world. These seem to be very esoteric notions, but they are ultimately the sense that we have for our life.
Yes, and that by reconnecting, there seems to be this ability that all answers lie within, that if we're not too sure of a particular situation that's taking place in our life right now, when you reconnect back into that quiet space, which is probably your consciousness, your true essence, you're able to get the answer. And sometimes that answer can be through an intuitive feeling of just gut feeling, which may be that higher self, the oversoul, the consciousness that you are connecting with you.
Yes, connecting. You see, the great insight that gives credibility to this, that comes from the sciences, is that we knew that energy cannot be destroyed or created, it can be transformed.
Right.
But the new insight is that information likewise. The information can be put together, but what there already exists, it cannot be destroyed. Information is there. And this information is an all-pervading information, for which the best metaphor that we have in terms of our experience and technological experience is a hologram. It's a hologram where every information that creates an image is present in every part of the hologram. And it seems to be that this information is all-pervading. What emerges in this universe since the Big Bang, in this particular universe, in parentheses, I don't think it's the only universe, nor was it the first universe, but this universe emerged about 13.8 billion years ago, roughly. And we know since then it's been evolving. And what is evolving in this universe are these increasingly complex and integrated clusters of vibrations which carry and process information more and more, until finally this information is beginning to embrace that information which is at the root of all things, which is the source of all things, which is the mind of God. Einstein talked about the mind of God, and a theory of everything is sort of like decoding the understanding the mind of God, because it's the information which is there in the world. That's the information that created us, that we express ourselves, and that's the information to which we can reconnect, which gives us the place where we are, gives us our sense, our identity, and gives us the satisfaction of who we are is very much a part of all there is, not just a little separate part, but very much an integral part, a part that can interact with all that is and can co-evolve with all that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And we choose these careers in life. We've each got a different path in life. Some of us will be scientists, some of us doctors, some of us actors, some of us entertainers, magicians, street cleaners, mums, dads. No matter what it is that we do, it must be very, very important for consciousness to want to experience this.
Well, whatever we are is an expression. As I said, a holographic expression. If you take it literally, I think it seems mind-boggling, because literally taking this holographic theory of the universe, which is a theory in physics, a serious theory, David Bohm has started in the 1980s, and it's been now developed by a score of quantum physicists, cosmologists, very seriously. Now, if you just take it literally, then it sees that we are just images, like, the famous parable of the cave, or by Plato, when he says we are like prisoners chained inside a cave, and there's a fire behind us, and we see the wall in front of us, and we see shadows on the wall, and we mistake those shadows for reality. He said that 2,500 years ago. Now, if you takes literally the holographic theory, then we are all shadows on the wall, because we're all projections of a cosmic intelligence. But dispersed the shadow of the wall is what there is. You know, this is the expression of an intelligence that is seeking to evolve, seeking to actualize itself, to put it in some slightly anthropomorphic terms, seeking to know itself, to recognize itself, seeking to find itself, seeking to create itself in the space and time world, and becoming one, enrich itself through this. My ultimate sort of conclusion, which again, speaking sort of at late at night,
Yeah.
I can always get to that. I can get to it immediately. It's also my conclusion. It seems to me that there is an aspiration, a drive built into this consciousness, which is to enrich itself through the consciousness that is creating, that is creating in the space and time world. The space and time world can embrace more and more, can recognize more and more, and this world is becoming a more conscious place through this non-local consciousness that exists in space and time. Not just local, not just one thing here and there, but all connected with all other things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just incredible. The holographic universe. I mean, that's a subject in its own right, and there have been people that have come on to my show to talk about the backdrop people, where what if this was a holographic universe and the people that you were seeing in the very distance are not even real? You're just generating it all. You're never going to go up to them to ask them, hello. They're just figments of your illusion, of this reality that you've created to have this experience.
To my mind, we either are all holographic images or none of us are.
Right.
If this is there is a cosmic consciousness which permeates the space-time world, and every element of that intelligence is present in every part of that space-time world. This is why we call it holographic. Then what we get is a kind of a fractal world in which each dimension reproduces the dimension above it and the dimension below it. So this is a very self-consistent, self-evolving, self-actualizing world in which either all things are part of it or none of it are. I don't think that I am real, and in the background there are people who are just images. If the background people are images, then I'm an image too.
Right.
And if I am a real person, even though I'm part of this holographic image, then so is everybody. So is every iota, every bacterium, every virus, every galaxy. Is equally participating in this co-creation of a universe which is moving towards coherence, moving toward complexity, moving toward awareness and recognition of the ultimate source.
Yes, there have been other guests as well come on to the show to talk about different frameworks of understanding, that when we cross over or go home, or however you want to personify it, that there are ultimate dimensions to go to, not just one. There may be infinitive to carry on to, in a sense. So we are just at this level, unaware of what's really is the true nature of this of reality, in a sense. But it does get a bit too far out there sometimes, in the sense of we are here now. What information of this nature can make our life in the moment now more peaceful, more enjoyable, more better? That's what I always try to bring into it. It's very amazing to think of this infiniteness of this awareness that we are. But what can it bring in some of this lost information do in the moment now? I think is quite important. Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely it is. There's this famous principle and the theories of science, it's called the Occam's razor, which means that entities are not to be multiplied beyond necessity. I would say universes and dimensions are not to be multiplied beyond necessity. I certainly am willing to, and I have been, and I am talking about planes of existence.
Planes, yeah.
there's a physical plane, but there's also there are transphysical planes, which seem to be a number of different planes of these. Some relatively close to the physical plane, which is astral planes. Then there can be the causal planes, and ultimately the highest level ethereal planes. There seems to be communication possible between entities, between beings or consciousness on these different planes. So what, to my mind, seems evident and almost indisputable is that the physical plane is only one plane of existence, and the consciousness does not originate in this plane, does not end with this plane, but it comes from a higher or deeper source and can move around, can evolve in that deeper source. So then within that deeper source, there are, to my mind, different planes, different levels of existence. We can get closer and closer to this ultimate source. And perhaps at one point, we either are ripe again to continue our physical existence in another body, or we enter heaven, we enter nirvana, we enter the whatever paradise or a plane or level of existence we can conceive of in spiritual terms. But certainly is something which is the very nature of the universe. I always start out and want to end with that insight. This is not a chance universe. I looked at it in some detail. There is not possible that this should be purely a casual assembly of things. The mathematics show that even the DNA of a fruit fly is so complex that the age of the universe is not sufficient to assemble it purely by casual processes. It wouldn't hit on it. You know.
Obviously, yeah.
It's very nice. You know the Rubik cube, the six-face cube, which has three positions each. The great mathematical physicist has Sir Fred. I'll think of it a moment. He's come up with this concept. He calculated the number of moves that are necessary to de-scramble from a random origin the Rubik cube, and it turns out that if you spend 1 second for each move, then it will take you longer than the age of the universe to unscramble it. Just there's so many possibilities to play through them all, you know, before you can descramble it.
I know, it's just incredible, but there are lots of scientists that look at this in a very different light. If they were joined in with our conversation right now, they would reflect on what we were saying from a very different stance points, wouldn't they?
Yes, but I'm willing to enter the discussion on the level of science. I think the evidence in terms of the complexity of even the simplest organism is such that the arguments for chance, which was the Darwinian argument, basically that there's just assemblage of things and they're running through all the possibilities, that is simply not possible. I mean, you couldn't create another viable structure by reassembling the DNA, even of a very simple organism. Very, very, very unlikely that you would hit on one viable structure. And that's been recognized now. So, and the same thing applies, I think, on all levels. Another basic argument is, I think, that we are up till now, we have discussed for the past 40, 50 years, even longer, that the micro level of reality is highly interactive, interdependent, it's entangled, but the higher levels become mechanistic and become so-called classical. Now it turns out that it isn't the case because there are so many phenomena, including consciousness phenomena, which cannot be reduced to classical states. So the way the brain operates, that also involves quantum processes. All life processes involve, even the photogenetic processes.
Yeah.
The most basic processes of life are based on quantum information processes. So we are not classical systems. We are, as living systems, we are highly macroscopic quantum systems. And that means that we are strongly, strongly embedded in each other and in this field from which all things emanate.
And thank you for sharing that as well. It's so interesting what you have to say. It's it really is. I knew this was going to be a fascinating interview with someone like yourself as a philosopher of science as well, and a theorist and everything else. Now, you mentioned earlier on, I know you've talked about this a number of times on different talk shows, the Akashic dimension. Now, there has been great seers like the Edgar Cases that were able to access these levels, and there is people now. What has your research taught you about this dimension, in the sense of all information is accessible from there and is able to be poured in just like remote viewers do, and past life information is accessible there as well?
The experience is there. I think it's incontrovertible. If you look at the evidence in terms of near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, even certain channeled experiences, you can't deny it. Remote viewing. I mean, I believe that our everyday perceptions are generated and produced by the brain, but there's so much going behind it that you can't. Not long ago, somebody asked me if I would be willing to spend an hour with a medium, which I have not really done before, but I accepted. And this was just to give it a chance. I was just sitting here and listening. And this medium said could contact my parents, or been passed over, and they've come up with some very tranquil and very really affirming information, very peaceful giving information about how misunderstandings that I had with my parents, particularly with my mother, regarding my choice of life, because she was very eager from becoming a pianist.
Yes.
And that has reached an understanding. Now, I don't know how this medium would have got this and would have expressed things in exactly the way I think my mother would have expressed that. I was careful. I was not even on Skype, so my no visual impressions were given. I was just sitting here and listening. Well, that's just one element. I'm mentioning this because this happened last week.
Interesting.
And there's just further evidence of our awareness is not something that is produced by the brain. Another interesting evidence for this is the work of Kenneth Ring. You probably know who deals the various out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences, working with the blind. In terms of people who are congenitally blind, have impressions. They're not literally seeing it with their eyes, but they have an awareness, which Ken Ring calls it a transcendental awareness, and they can identify features of the environment, and which they never had. I mean, all this lifetime, they never had any visual experience at all. And they have kind of visual experiences, which they try to describe, and of course, there are only visual terms to describe it, but it isn't exactly what they are seeing. They're not seeing colors and shapes. They're getting impressions of their surroundings. And they can describe these impressions, and obviously describing it in sort of everyday terms, because there's the only language they have. But it's something that exists. We are not dependent on our impressions on our brain. And another thing, I'm sorry if I throwing this on you, but I mean, you're asking me also about what made me convinced of this thing. If you think it's amazing what nature produces, what living systems are, how living systems have a wisdom, have know what is happening to them. We can't explain even how an ordinary spider can spin that complex web. We counted out a number of DNA molecules that would have in the body of a spider. It's not enough to process all that information is required to make a complex web like they're doing. And it's born, it's inborn. I don't think our life, our intelligence, our consciousness begins with our physical birth. We are just inheriting it. We are just reconstituting what was already there. I don't think an animal knows that animal is for the first time in the world. It just continues its existence. All of us have pet animals. I've always had in a family a dog, and the dog becomes so much a member of the family, and so much can share everything. and knows a lot about us, knows a lot about his surroundings, also knows when I'm coming back and when I'm going to leave and about for how long I'm going to leave. It's very clear in his behavior that is very well aware of all that. And it's not simply produced by his brain, although he's a good brain, but I think these are much deeper things. And we are all part of this information field which we call life.
Yeah, well, I think you just mentioned it there, maybe you did. It's, for example, like your dog. It knows you're coming back, yet, you may come back at different times of the day. You may be many, many, many miles away from where the dog is, but a long way away, yet it senses that, you've put that thought out there, that conscious thought out there that you're heading home, and it's able to pick up on that consciousness, that whatever it is, that space where everything is just known.
Yes, we are part of this dimension which people call the Akashic field. I've called it that myself. I now call it the deep dimension, the dimension out of which space-time was born. And this dimension has the cosmic intelligence, and everything that we produce, everything that is, every impression that we have, every experience becomes part of that, and is reproducible from that. It's reconstructible from that. So when we enter a deeply altered state, we can connect with our past, we can connect with others. I think we have become part of that cosmic field. That I have no doubt about that.
No, and I completely agree with you as well. Now, for some people coming across these subjects, or they're sort of dipping their toes in there as well, about the idea that, are they more than just their mind? Is there something out? Are they something outside of their mind? And what they tend to do is, what you perceive is real, and what you can't perceive, therefore, is not real.
Well, I mean, there is this typical skeptical attitude. I believe what I see. If I don't see it, I don't believe it. Or if I can't experience it, I don't believe it. There is an inverse of this, which is also true. If I don't believe it, I don't see it. Because it is, even scientists, if something goes beyond the evidence of their theories, the scope of their theories, they are not aware of it. And some of them say, even a famous scientist at one point said, even if it was true, I wouldn't believe it. But if he doesn't believe it, he simply fails to perceive it.
Yeah, we call those people, don't show me the evidence, my mind is already made up.
That's right, yes. Because they won't know the evidence. You can show it, but they won't notice it anyway. It's disturbing. Actually all learning is a form of disturbance. You disturb what you already know. Otherwise, it won't open up. Otherwise, it'll be a closed system. But the more you can enter into this deeper dimension, more into an altered state, more into yourself, the broader the scope of what you can perceive and what you can recognize, the broader the scope of openness. And openness, that is what it's all about, being able to open these deeper realities in the world. Then you can ultimately recognize who you are. And that's the greatest recognition. It's the most difficult one.
But for some people, discussing subjects like this, they can only go so far with it, in the sense that it's beyond their understanding. No one's ever come up with anything conclusive. Yes, internally they feel that there's something deeper, but to try to express it and really just, move with it to see if their life could change with moving with it, it becomes to a point where they have to walk away from it.
Well, that's the problem with, call it paradigms, call it enculturing an ideology or a spiritual system, embedding oneself in it. Then whatever falls into it, it's okay, it's real, then you can experience it. Whatever is outside of it is dismissed because it's a disturbance factor. It's something that you don't want to know intuitively or subconsciously, because it questions some of the things that you believe you already know.
Or the way you act as well. It could question your behavior, which you may not want to question.
Well, we behave the way we think we should behave, unless you're truly asocial and criminal mind. I mean, we want to live up to our expectations of ourselves. And obviously, if you behave in a different way, then there's a disturbance. But if you behave something differently, then you can behave a different way. For example, if you think that we are all chance phenomena, you have no responsibility, then even killing and commanding other people, dominating and doing with them what you want, is just the way the world is. As the more powerful, more resourceful is wins. After all, the winners come out on top, and you have no other responsibility. That's simply the way it is. That's the old Darwinian paradigm, which was not poor Darwin's idea at all, but this is what his followers made out of this, of the survival of the fittest theory. But if you believe that there is, we are elements, interdependent, co-evolving features of a cosmic intelligence, then you don't simply act in that way of making others subservient and are pursuing your own interests at the expense of other people's.
Well, that's why that I find that some atheists are some of the most spiritual people you'll find, and some of the most caring people, because they do care about one another. They wouldn't want to hurt a fellow mankind, and to me, that is all the signs of spirituality.
Well, atheist is okay. Agnostic is a stupid thing, I think, to behave everything you simply cannot know. Atheist means that there is no transcendental God, simply speaking. But it doesn't mean that there is not a higher intelligence. That maybe the spirit, the divine spirit, whatever you call it, is the soul of all things, is in us, and it's in the world, you know. So it's not a theistic, strictly speaking, it's not a theistic doctrine. It's a doctrine of saying this world is what the animist, what the great spiritual systems, the pre-religious systems of going back many thousands of years, thought the whole world is alive, the whole world is spirit, and we're all moving together. And that's a very deep attitude, it's a very deep conviction. So I find nothing wrong with that.
No, absolutely not. And, you know, another point to all this as well is what you've expressed in this interview is in the sense that in this consciousness, it is all connected, obviously. And in that sense, potentially, we all come from there. And if we just saw ourselves as all connected in just that sense that that our awareness, the I am, is all connected, we are all that from that same energy, would we behave towards each other as we do right now if we saw ourselves as family, as connected, rather than I came from that mother, no, I came from that father, no, that's my family over there, so I won't care about that family over there so much. It's not like that on the bigger picture when you see it from this perspective of oneness.
There is even some evidence of cultures that have a strong Buddhist cultures or Oriental cultures that believe in reincarnation. They are more peaceful. I think the traditional Indian culture, there are exceptions, of course. There are violence everywhere and intolerance. But on the whole, in the Indian culture, the Chinese culture, the Oriental culture, Japanese also, they are more peaceful. They are more oriented toward understanding each other. Of course, you can mislead them. You can create violent armies anywhere in the world. But deep down, the individual is closer to this recognition in those deep cultures than it is in the typical Western culture, the modern culture, which says, as you say, I'm just born here, and this is what I am, and you are over there, and you are that, and we really have nothing more to do with each other than we happen to share the same environment and have access to the same resources. And if I take more, then it's my right, because then I'm cleverer, fitter than you are, and it's my right to do it. And never mind what happens to you. And that is that kind of never mind the consequences. I am here for myself.
Yes.
Because I live once, and I am me, and you are you. That is the greatest danger to peace and well-being, and even survival on this planet.
Of course it is. Yet consciousness let us come to experience this with free will and a complete veil, forgetting us of our true nature of who we are. We are blanked from remembering the 100% trueness of who we truly are. Why it's done that and allowed us this freedom of amnesia, I suppose, had it not allowed us amnesia or given us amnesia, or we gave ourselves amnesia from our true essence, maybe this experiment, this experience, this just being here right now having this conversation would never take place.
Yeah, this amnesia is something very much a typical modern day product. Great spiritual teachers, philosophers, classical philosophers, they recognize that there is amnesia, but they also recognize that that's not the truth. That amnesia is just forgetting, but it's not what really is the case. I think this is very much a human product, a modern day human product of amnesia being, not amnesia, not just forgetting, that is the truth, that we are really brand new every time, you know. And not even we, I mean somebody else. I mean, it's not I am who am reborn again, that's another person who's being born.
Well, I've just had an aha moment in this interview. And my aha moment in this interview is maybe it's to allow us to come up with individual truths. We are, you know, we have this, and I'll use the word again, amnesia. I know that's the word, I know what you've just explained about that, but have this amnesia there in a sense so that we come up with our own truth, so that we're not contained within the truth of where we come from or the truth of our true essence. We can make up a new truth about ourselves, and from that truth, where do we go with it?
Well, we have a chance to think for ourselves, but I think our inspirations, call it inspiration, our intuitions, our instincts, all of these things, our inborn knowledge is connecting us with our knowledge, which is beyond this forgetting, and this is connecting us with our past lives, with the lives of all things around us. So it's we have every time we can create from new things. We are not bound to the other things. And your aha moment, I think, has a lot of interest to it, a lot of truth to it, because we are not limited, therefore, by our established knowledge. But we are still inspired from it. We are tapping into that knowledge. We are part of that. And that enriches our knowledge. And the more deeper we can allow our mind to penetrate, the more open it is, the richer these intuitions, the deeper the insights that we have. Perhaps the closer it is to what there really is in the world, in this world, which is a world of information, a world of self-evolving energy fields,
Yes.
Which evolve together toward higher and higher levels of consciousness. That ultimately seems to be, at least to my mind, the quintessence of reality.
Do you think, though, that with religion we're able to go to deeper truths outside of the walls that religion would allow us? And I suppose it's very important that the soul chose that experience of that religion maybe as well.
We can build on religions. I think religions, again, I don't want to just keep making big statements, but just to characterize sort of the essence of the conclusions that I have reached. I think every great religion is based on experience, on very deep personal experience. And this experience is by those who became the prophets. Many people may have these experiences, not everybody becomes a prophet. But those who had the disciples who reproduced this, who made such an impression on the world around them, that their insights were committed first, not necessarily to paper or to marble blocks or whatever, but who were committed into the memory of people around them. Those have become the prophets, and those are the founders of the religions.
Yes.
Religions are built on this deep personal experience of oneness, and the way to it is love which appears in every religious as a basic element, and therefore a shared mind, a shared consciousness.
Yes.
It is there in every religion, and that's the as close we can get through religions to the
No,
ultimate
no,
truth.
no.
The great pity is that we forget the spirit of the religions and just take the doctrine, the dogma, which happens also to ideologies. Also, it's the big problem of the followers, whether it's the followers of Darwin or of Hitler. They just take or of Stalin or Mao. They just take simply the superficial part, just like Newton's followers just took the mechanical laws and not the deep insight of Newton, who said that mass is not really matter. Matter is something much deeper than what we can measure as mass. And that has been more or less forgotten. So religions give us something, a way to truth.
Yes, and I can.
Not
Yeah.
look at the doctrine, not to look at the rituals, but look at what it really means. What was really the experience that was conveyed in the religion?
You know what I struggle with that sometimes is when the religion says, if you don't believe in my way, you will go to hell, as is the only way to save you. And do you know what my understanding of that is nowadays? Is that and this could be different to yours, which is fantastic if it is, but my understanding is, and it may change, that the person like Mohammed channeled the information as he did, but he's only as clear as he was as good as he is. So he is just a filter with his own truth there as well. So he may have heard this consciousness come through him, and he personifies it as God, which is what a word that we could use. Yet, he's still a filter, and his truths still made it into the Quran. It's filtered with his truths. I don't think love has barriers like hell.
I'm not an expert on the Quran or any of the religious doctrines per se, but the Quran is full of understanding and love as well. And it's only one aspect of it. There is a kind of a social cohesion aspect of the faithful must come together, and protect itself from the infidels. But that's the aspect that was emphasized by the followers. The deep insight is, I think the spiritual insight is there in every religion, including Islam.
And I'll agree with you there in the sense that, when you see people that have lost their way, people in prison, for example, that have found Islam and it's changed their way, it's changed their world, it's made them a better person, then I'm all for it. Then that's really, really, really good. Or it could be Christianity, right? It's just as me and you, well, as I would say, it's not. It is filtered. There is stuff in these religious texts that is not coming from love, as far as I understand it. Some aspects.
There is this aspect of sociological aspect. You must keep a community together with something. Now, ideally, the community, the brethren, would be kept together by love. But there's an element also being used as protection against incursion by others and being absorbed by others, which means exclusion, exclude the others, which comes to verses, fighting the others, eliminating the others. And that element is a sociological element, which is not really part of the deepest core of the religions. It's something which had to be inserted. There is an element in Christianity, for example. I said I'm not a theologian, but I was struck by this element of the teaching of Jesus' love. But very soon in the encyclicals, in the great conventions of the early Christian church, other elements came in. For example, that the teachings you don't take directly from God or from Christ. You take it from the ecclesiastical authorities, from the church, and the church has to be the one that provides you this passport, enters into the select circle, and for example, the whole doctrines of Christ, the teaching of the Essenes, which is a beautiful part of the Testament, which has not been really picked up as a central doctrine, because it tells you that you can be taught by Jesus. Jesus directly came to you and made accessible all this directly. And you don't need to go to the church and to the priest. But the sociological aspect of the power base is such that you have to prevent the people from going all over and dipping into other religions or into things that would not be consistent with the church doctrine. For that reason, you have to maintain the power base of the church. The church knows, the church is anointed, and therefore you can only get your salvation through the church. So that is a sociological element. It's not the spiritual element. And for us, I think if you are really interested in getting the essence of each religion, you have to look for the spiritual element.
Okay. Well, thank you for reminding me of that. I appreciate that. And thank you for reminding the audience of that. Thank you. What would you say is the most important message nowadays of your work?
Well, okay. Translated into everyday terms would be oneness and therefore love. There is nothing in the universe which is not based on coherence, on the attraction of one thing to another, complementing one thing on another. And this complementation is not just reproducing uniformity. It's not just one thing adding the same thing to another, one thing to another. It's finding communion with the other. It's complementing, just like the nucleus of an atom, the proton and the neutron, it complement each other and attracts the electron, which enters into it and becomes part of it. At that very basic level, it's there already. And it's there in the galaxies and in the meta-galaxy. It's all seem to be complementing. It's all creating structure based on mutual attraction, based on the joining together of diverse plant parts and elements. So not to mistake complexity for simply or size, simply for adding the same things together. It's a question of using the diversity as a basis for unity. The diversity in our own body, diversity in our mind, in our thinking, having that as a basis for creating a unity that can join us together and that can enable each of us to apprehend, to perceive more of the world, therefore to evolve our consciousness. I think to me that is the deepest teaching. Treasure diversity, but turn to your diverse partner with love, with understanding, and understand that together you are more than you are separately.
Beautiful, beautiful. And just your website as well, if people just want to have a look at your website.
Well, there are several actually. There's the ervinlaszlo.com, but there is also what I'd like nowadays to put very much the emphasis on is the research into the new paradigm, where you can just simply look at my name, LaszloInstitute.com, because we are trying to do serious research to do with physicists, with biologists, with consciousness researchers, and so on, to give credence to this new concept, the new old concept, the rediscovered old concept.
I like that, yeah.
Of oneness and of evolution, co-evolution in the world, as from the very basis, from the beginning of space and time, to the latest generations of complex systems on this earth and wherever they happen in the universe. All this is the expression of a single tremendous movement toward higher and higher levels of consciousness based on higher level of participation and co-evolution.
Wow. Okay. Well, Ervin, Laszlo, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure to have someone of your caliber on. Thank you.
Well, it's wonderful to be here. I think we have spent almost an hour. It went like 5 minutes. I've been enjoyed very much talking these questions. I'm glad I have the opportunity to express things that I normally only share with people when we sit around the fire close to midnight. But this was an occasion where I could do that. Thank you very much.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on our past and upcoming guests by going to themoreshow.co.uk and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.